Okay, hello everyone. Perfect, great. So, very quickly, who am I? I'm Mark Mulligan. I've been a music industry analyst for far, far too many years, but perhaps more importantly, a dance music fanatic for even longer. Ever since accidentally stumbling into an acid house party in 1989, raving through too much of the 90s, making dance music in the years since. This is actually my first time in Ibiza, and it wasn't until I actually watched the sunset last night I realized how important this island actually is to me. So, soppiness aside, I'm really pleased to be here, and hopefully what you're going to see in this presentation is going to build upon the great work that's been done in previous reports. It's a bit like Doctor Who, right? The face and the body changes every couple of years, but we'll see how many seasons I am before I transform into another one. What we're going to do with all of this is basically, in a very short amount of time, get through a huge amount of information. So we're going to start off looking, if my clicker's going to work, yes. Going to start off looking at the bigger industry. And that's everything across live and recordings, etc. Then moving into really what we think of as like the demand and the supply side of a dance music business. On the one hand, the people actually making the music, and on the other hand, the people actually listening to it. Then into the dance music industry itself, and we've got some great partner data. And then finally, what you've all been waiting for, the big number, just how big is this industry? So first of all, the global recorded music market. As you can see, streaming is I'm going to actually stand slightly off stage so you can see what I'm talking about. So what we're seeing is that the music business, the recorded music business, is a bit that most people pay most attention to. When people say the music industry, they're often talking about this bit. And the 2021 was this amazing year of growth. You know, it's like 25% growth in revenue. That was never going to carry on. That was like post-pandemic year. It was always an anomalous year. So still to get to 7% growth this year is still an incredibly strong high level of organic growth. In a year that was difficult, right? A year in which we've got a cost of living crisis hitting, in which this, like, the geopolitical situation of the world's falling apart and all these other things going on. For recorded music revenues to still grow by 7% is really some good going. And there's a couple of things looking forward. Streaming is still going to grow. There's still growth left in it, but it's not going to grow at the rate it used to. So it's the new things that we need to look at as where the growth is going to come from. So what we call non-DSP, so things like TikTok and Twitch and Meta, these are going to be really important places for growing music revenue in the future. They're already really big in terms of where people are, but the actual money flowing from those partners is going to become much more important over the coming years. And the other bit, this grey bit at the top, the other, within there is a couple of really important segments, and that's the merchandise and expanded rights. Why is this so important? Because we're in a visual world. Nearly everything that happens on our phones is video. And so the image of the artist, whatever genre you're talking about, is just becoming more and more important. And now is the time where we can start working out ways that music rights holders can really start to monetize that. Then we've got the publishing business, a smaller industry, but one that very significantly outgrew the music business, recorded music business last year, 17% growth. Now, some of that is because there have been new rates set, some of it's organic, some of it's because those new places like TikTok, etc., pay a larger share to publishers than they do to labels. And of course, there's been a massive amount of attention on the music publishing business. Lots of big investors coming in. And I think what we're seeing is finally music publishing and songwriters are beginning to find their fair share of the music business. They're not there yet, but certainly on a path where they're increasing their share. And then on the streaming side, it's easy to think that Spotify is all, is the be-all and end-all of streaming. It's not. It's less than a third of the market in terms of subscribers. The reason it feels so big is it's got huge soft power. Like, here's a little test. How many people in this room use Spotify? There you go. That's not 30%, because everybody in the music business uses Spotify, so everybody sees the world through a Spotify lens. And so Spotify has this huge cultural soft power, And also, the most avid music fans are often listening to Spotify too. But you can see there's this massive amount of subscribers that exist elsewhere. So if there's nothing else you take away from today, just remember the streaming world is not all Spotify. I'm not saying it's not crucially, pivotally important, but don't forget that the majority of your audience is going to be somewhere else, just purely in numerical terms. This is looking at the revenue of some of the world's biggest companies across live, publishing, streaming. Really simple thing, I feel like the weather forecaster here, but really simple thing is everything is growing. Right? And this hasn't always been the case. Obviously, COVID, not live back, etc. So we're finally at the stage where everything is growing. And even just across these companies, nearly $61 billion of revenue in 22. On the label side, we've seen a really important shift. The major labels are still crucially important, and they're growing at really strong rates, and they're more valuable than they've ever been. But independents are really finding their moment. So it's just looking at, so to the bigger independents, looking at Hybe, the K-pop superpower, doubled its revenues between 2020 and 2022. Huge amounts of growth. Believe, which has obviously got a big dance music focus, also grew really strongly. There's this new generation of sort of decent-sized indies who are on the cusp of becoming really big superpowers within the global music business. And I think the really interesting thing is none of them look the same. They've all got different assets. They all do different things. And live, well, the picture tells the story. It's this situation of, a near-death experience in 2020 with the pandemic impacting. We're looking at Live Nation on the left and then Polestar's figures for the top 100 tours globally. So not only has the industry recovered, it is bigger than it was before the pandemic. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that, but one of the underlying ones is there's this massive pent-up demand. When people spent a year and a half without being able to go to gigs and clubs and festivals, they were just desperate to get back out there again. So don't expect this sort of growth to happen next year and the year on, but do expect this part of the industry to remain bigger and more established than it was before. So, a few key takeaways from this. I think the really interesting thing about trying to work out where you put streaming in the mix is if you're a not particularly large label or a not particularly large publisher or sort of a mid-sized artist, streaming doesn't pay that much, right? Just because of the nature of the economics. But it's crucially important as the engine room that drives everything else. Back in the old days, people used to think about getting their radio spins because that would get them the festival booking or the sync or the brand deal or whatever else. That's what streaming plays now. So whatever happens to the economics of streaming, its role as the fire starter for artists' careers is just going to continue. So on to fans and creators. This is using some Vibrate data. This is looking at the Spotify listeners to electronic music genres, and as you'd expect, US, Germany, UK, the big three at the top, the biggest audiences. But I'd like you to think about it in a slightly different way. Because of course they're going to be big, because they're some of the world's biggest countries. It's this grey line, which is looking at it as a percentage of the population. Suddenly you get Netherlands and Australia completely over-indexing. So what that means is that dance music culture has a much bigger role overall in those countries than it does India. Tiny, tiny percentage of the population. And obviously, streaming's only just getting going there. But the reason why this is important, because when you're looking at where you're going to be building your business, where your DJs are going to get, building their audience, etc., focusing on the markets where dance music culture is much more pervasive, they might be the better ones to think as the launchpad, the place where they're going to become national successes, not just niche successes, that then opens up all those other markets. Again, using some Vibrate data here, we're looking at the growth. So this is the change from 21 to 22 in terms of Instagram follows, TikTok follows, YouTube, and Spotify. What do you see from this? So dance music here in orange compared to hip-hop. On social, we've got a situation where dance music social following grew more strongly in 21 than in 22 than hip-hop did, but streaming grew more slowly. This is a launch pad for this. So the bigger that social following get, the more that goes and drives into streaming, etc. So that hopefully bodes well for some good streaming growth in the coming year. So here we're looking at some consumer data. This is sort of MIDiA field surveys across the world to consumers regularly, and this is taking some of that data, looking at it for dance music fans versus everybody else. Number one thing you see, they over-index on everything. They are just more active, avid music consumers. But it's this top bit, watching music videos on YouTube. So nearly 3/4 of dance music fans do that. And if you think about just how good a place YouTube has become for watching DJ sets, there is so much that a dance music fan can only get from places like YouTube and SoundCloud just because of how difficult it's proven to try to properly license DJ sets onto the main streaming platforms. But never forget, however passionate somebody is about dance music, it's just one part of their life. I'm just pulling out two different things here where dance music fans over-index. Number one, they're way more likely to be gamers. And so they're spending 6.7 hours a week playing games compared to 9.2 hours listening to music. So that means nearly, they're spending 2/3 as much time playing games as they are listening to music, even though they're identifying first as dance music fans. And it turns out they're also really climate conscious. So these figures might look fairly small. 24% look out for climate conscious products. 17 listen to climate change podcasts. But that's way above the overall consumer average. There's 1,001 other things where dance music fans have these interests which are more than the average consumer. But the reason I'm making this point is always remember that dance music listening, whether they're at a festival, whether they're streaming, is just one part of who they are. And so the really way you get through and connect with them is you join the dots between the other parts of their lives. And then on to the music creators. So this is again from a MIDiA field surveys to artists, producers, songwriters. We're calling them creators rather than an artist or a DJ or a songwriter. Why? Because they're doing so much more these days. There's no one who just does one thing. They are creating this in a much wider sense. And even though the majority are not making it as a career full-time. So you've got the majority of the rest is what, the industry will tend to think of as the enthusiasts, right? It's, the people who just do it as a hobby. Wrong. When you look at it and break it down for all those people who don't earn it as a career, they're split half-half between those who are passionate and do want a career and those who are passionate and are just doing it without expecting there to be a career. So that means they're just as focused. They're going to spend just as much money on kit and software, and they're going to spend just as much time making the music and doing everything they can to go and get those streams and get followed, but they don't expect to make a career from it. It's really important to understand that this really big growth sector in the music creator economy as a whole, but definitely within dance music, is as these passionate enthusiasts. Do not dismiss them as hobbyists, because they will put just as much effort, and they'll probably put more money in because they're not having to rely upon music to pay the rent. They've got a day job, so they can afford to buy the greatest, nice new synthesizer and spend some money on marketing and whatever else. Now, all of the music creators, but dance music creators especially, have these three big challenges. How to cut through the clutter. There's just so much music being made by so many people. There are nearly 6.5 million self-releasing music artists out there. That was up by nearly a fifth compared to the year before. There's 800,000 plus new songs on the main streaming services every month. Many more of that going to other platforms. And so this volume of music that's being released, it's really difficult to get yourself heard. And they don't feel that they have enough time or enough money to do what they want to do. Now, the not enough time is really interesting, because really what that is about is they're spending so much time doing all of the social stuff to try to build a profile, they're finding they don't have enough time to make music. Now, one of the things we really wanted to explore this year was looking at the role of women creators versus male. And across a whole bunch of things, many things are similar, but one thing massively jumps out. 67% of female creators say they feel the pressure to look good, compared to 14% of men. That has to change. But one thing which I find really, which is like, men creators listen up. Look how smart they are about the tools that they're using. 59% of them using graphic design tools. Because how you present yourself on socials and your Canvas and Spotify and all of these things, they're pivotal to how you are, how you succeed, how people see who you are. And 29% of them using project management tools compared to just 18% of men. So, headline story from this, they shouldn't be feeling this pressure to look good, but they're smart about the way they're doing their business than their male counterparts. So that's the positive news. This is a little bit less positive. So this is using Vibrate data, looking at the top 100 DJs globally, looking at all of the bookings each one of those DJs had in 2021 and 22. So 15% of all of the bookings in 2022 of those top 100 DJs were from females, and they grew more slowly than male did. I'm going to leave that here because I'm not party to the conversations with bookers and whoever else, whatever this is, but the data says something really clear. Of the top 100 DJs, their share actually declined in 2022 as a result of the male DJs increasing their bookings more. So, I'm conscious I'm running short of time, so I'm going to leave you here before I move on to the big bit. I've done really well not to say AI right up until this point. And I'm going to try not to say it again after this because there's loads of great things coming on about AI. But there is a really important thing. AI is not just people doing dodgy Drake and the Weeknd covers. It's, AI is used in Isotope Neutron to help people do the mastering. It's all over the place. If you think about it, it's like having, for those who can remember what these were, cassette recorder when that came out and everybody thought that's just copying. Napster and a guitar all rolled into one. It's a tool, it's an instrument, it's all of these things together. It's not something that we've ever had anything quite like this before. But whatever it ends up doing to copyright and everything else, the bit which is really important is it's going to help more people make music. And it's going to predominantly help more people make electronic music. Because AI is far easier to help you make beats and electronic sounds than it is to make you play a guitar. So it will act as a funnel for bringing more people into making music. More people will come into music through dance sounds and therefore are more likely to end up with more dance music producers as the end of it. So don't be so fast to see AI as a devil because it is also going to be a great way of growing the number of people who become dance music creators and dance music fans. Right, I'm going to go really quickly through these. Ben, how long have I got left? Am I okay? Right. So just want to walk through a few things. This, ticket revenues and events per venue in Ibiza. Look at the change, right? So what do we get from this? Obviously, Ibiza is back, but there are more events being put on. Why are there more events being put on? Because there's so much demand. Why is there so much demand? Because the dance music industry globally is growing. DJs are having more impact. More people are listening. Places like TikTok and SoundCloud are giving more people more ways to come into dance music and connect with dance music producers and DJs. And as a consequence, the more that the global dance music fan base grows, the more that Ibiza is always going to grow as well. Because it's ultimately somewhere along your journey, you're going to want to come to Ibiza. So this is a sort of real science. Like in many ways, Ibiza is both the cause and the effect of the success of the global dance music business. Here's some looking at Beatport's genre data. So this is like the most popular genres. You'll have seen a version of this slide in previous reports. You can see there's not been much change at the top, but the two things which I think are interesting is, look, the rise of dance and electropop and the rise of indie dance. So the idea of what dance music is broadening, and it's sort of a minimal techno purist might say indie dance doesn't really count as dance, but that doesn't matter. It's like people who are indie dance music fans are coming into dance music through that and see that as as their flavor of what dance music is. And then this is looking at Loopmaster searches. So yeah, there's this massive concentration in the left about those few top genres. But 3 times as many people, when you add it up, are going through all of these niche genres. Never forget the importance of niche. A niche has become a defining factor of what the music business is. Why? Well, one of the reasons is the algorithms are really good at getting our really distinct tastes and then pushing us closer and closer to those distinct tastes. So the algorithms, whether it's on TikTok or Instagram or Spotify, wherever, is making us get closer to niches. And then when you start getting closer to niches, scenes start to evolve from that. People start making for those sort of niches, and those niches become bigger. So things like hyperpop, etc., are really good examples of that. And by the way, if you like the sound of that, my colleague Tatiana later on today will be presenting downstairs exactly on this, on niche and scenes and fragmentation. Right, he's looking at Beatport's revenue overall. Now, this really interesting thing, when you look at that big pie chart there, the dance music business is still heavily, heavily focused in Europe and North America, but it is changing. And one of the things that is really going to change that as well is the rise of emerging markets. So if you remember the slide I showed you, I'll stand out the way for those people who want to take pictures. So if you remember, I showed you a slide at the start about the market share of all of the streaming services. I'm saying, look, Spotify's just 30%. You'll have seen this Tencent and NetEase Cloud Music, really big players, but they're only available in China. Got hundreds of millions of subscribers, but they're only in one country. And then you've got India really beginning to grow. Indonesia and Thailand beginning to lift off. Emerging markets are going to become the engine of the future of streaming growth. And why this matters is because in the past, in the traditional recorded music business, revenues were big where basically people had good amounts of money to spend because you bought CDs or vinyl or whatever it was, whenever it was. So as a consequence, it's the richest nations were the ones that shaped the recorded music business. Now in the streaming era, where people don't have to pay to listen, you're getting this massive growth of interest in local music. And that growth of interest in local music is creating the emergence of local scenes. And so expect there to be more music that is not only means that those local sort of emerging markets are going to have really big local scenes, those local scenes are going to export. And we've already seen that when you see, whether it's, Bad Bunny or whoever, you've got all of these artists breaking through who in the past wouldn't have had that platform. So expect the dance music industry, as with the whole of the recorded music industry, for those other smaller slices just to get bigger and bigger over the coming years. TikTok has had an incredibly strong year in terms of growth. So this is mainly focused around the hashtag electronic music. 5.9 billion cumulative global views. This is clearly a really big, part of what is happening on TikTok at the moment since they've been sort of putting more focus on it. 140% growth in daily views. So if you remember that slide I showed you earlier on, showing the social growth of dance music versus hip hop, this is yet another way of looking at it. Onto SoundCloud, which, in many ways has been, sort of like one of the spiritual homes of dance music online for a long time. 320 million tracks, 40 million artists. Now, you might have heard me say before, there are about 6.5 million self-releasing artists. There's 40 million here. What's the difference? The majority of artists are not putting their music onto standard streaming. The majority of self-releasing artists are putting it straight onto places like SoundCloud or YouTube or BandLab or TikTok. This is going to be a really important part of the future. And the reason is, if you're a small up-and-coming artist, or even someone who's been around for a while, but it's never quite got to, it's like 100 million sort of stream sort of level, or even 10 million streams, or even 100,000, streaming can be a huge amount of effort for a relatively low amount of return. The amount of work you've got to do on, it's like 3 or 4 Instagram posts a day to keep your profile up and whatever else, having to put something out every single month. And crucially, you can't talk to your audience. There's no way for you to be able to reach out to that person who's listening to you on Spotify. Places like SoundCloud let you do that. So this isn't an advertorial for SoundCloud. What it is a way of saying that this is going to be, if you like, the secret sauce of what will make anybody who wants to thrive with the independent artist sector, is to allow independent artists to find their fans, not just an anonymous audience, but to really connect and talk with the fans. One thing I really like about this is BPMs, average BPMs have gone up, and it's like the listening on SoundCloud, which having an 18-year-old daughter who listens to depressingly slow, like chill-out music all the time, I find it a nice antidote. But most importantly, my genre, trance music, has disappeared off the Beatport top 10 charts, but here, thankfully, still running true in SoundCloud. Right, so to finish up, this is the bit you've all been waiting for, right? Drum roll. Well, first of all, before I do get into that, just to stretch it out a tiny bit further, build the anticipation. One thing we really wanted to focus on this year was what we think is arguably the most important part of the industry that you should be looking at. Now, some of you in the room are big players in this space, but basically the hardware, software, tools, and services which people are using to make music. And this is just looking at the bit which is dance music, right? So this is not, the total market was 6.6 billion last year, but just the dance music bit's nearly 3 billion. And, lots of this stuff you'll be really familiar with, decks and synthesizers and, audio interfaces, et cetera, et cetera. But it's this small grey bar at the bottom that is bit where we think is going to be the most exciting and most important. And that's skill sharing and learning. So skill sharing might be, hey, I'm really good at doing production, but I'm terrible at mastering. Let me find somebody who can do the mastering for me, or I need somebody to do a top line. So you get in places like Fiverr, et cetera, really beginning to grow in that space. And then you've got people really needing to learn, how can I get my skills up fast? Because today's music creator, particularly the youngest ones, they want to go from 0 to 100 as fast as they possibly can. They don't want to spend 2 or 3 years learning how to make compression work. They just want to be able to press something that makes their sound big. And because the technology is changing so quickly, the demand for learning is going to grow quickly as well. We think this is going to be, represents one of the most interesting growth areas in dance music in particular. Nobody has yet created a place where you can bring all the creators together so they can learn from each other and bring themselves each other up. And there's a really good incentive for the industry to make this happen. Because the quicker that people get better at making music, the better the quality of the music they make, and whichever genre is on that most is the one who's going to end up with more good music in the marketplace. Right, so here we are. Final preamble before we build on. Just to help you feel comfortable with the numbers, because it's a big number which is going to come up. The live music business, actually, even though the dance music part of live music has grown really strongly, it's not grown as fast as the overall live business, right? So the overall live business has grown even faster than the dance music live business has grown. So you can see we're up to 4.4 billion. That's actually lost some of its share of the total live business. So what does that mean? That means there's a huge amount of growth still yet to come. This wasn't it. Whereas the overall live business has basically got back to where it should be and a bit more. The dance music part of that still has a lot more to go yet. So it's a big number, but it could be even bigger. Recorded music and publishing. We remember publishing grew by about 17% or so, recorded by about 7%. So you put those things together. Dance music actually increased its share a little as well. And then we get onto the production hardware, and then we could see that that also grew really strongly, and dance music slightly increased its share. So you add it all together, and we end up with $11.3 billion was the value of the global dance music industry in 2022. And look, that's bigger than it was in 2019. So this is not just about bouncing back. This is bouncing back and almost bouncing off the trampoline. There's a huge amount of momentum that is coming from so many different places. And there's other bits we haven't captured in here, like merchandise, so like branding and merchandise. So there's all other elements of this as well. So the actual wider industry is probably even bigger still. So to finish up, I'm not going to read all of these. I'm hoping you're all capable of reading. So what I will say is, go into that last bit. The future is bright because of the rise of creator culture. More people are becoming music producers and creators, but more people are leaning in as consumers. Whether doing a duet on TikTok or whatever it might be, more people want to actually stop just listening and start doing And why is this so important? Because it's about identity. Fundamentally, why is any of us here? Because music moves us. And one of the things about streaming, it's just something that's on in the background most of the time. it's like turning on the tap of water. It's in many ways, it's taken the fandom and the identity, sucked it out of music so that you can have these playlists of like nice relaxed music while you make your dinner. And I think the big thing is that so much of what TikTok and YouTube and other, and Instagram do is they let people say who they are. And that's why I think the creator culture, letting people use, whether it's AI or whatever it might be, actually get involved in saying who they are through music will only be a big positive driver. So this is really the last bit. The traditional industry is going to grow like this. Right? So that means, market's still going to be getting bigger next year and the year on, and this is the bit we all know. But there's a new industry which is growing alongside, which will still, of course, will have the growth of music producers and DJs in it. But AI, said it again, will be a part of this future. The rise of online scenes and communities and platforms like TikTok will be part of this future. New companies who don't quite look like old traditional record labels or publishers or software companies, the future of the business is going to break into two separate parts. Now, they might be connected, but have no doubt they are going to evolve differently. And having an industry driven by two separate industries hopefully means even faster growth in the years ahead. So thank you very much. I hope you found that interesting. Thank you, everyone.